All right,
Okay, got it.
we are now doing roll call.
All right, Trish.
Present.
Sandra is not here.
Excused.
Sue, Deborah,
Present.
Lynette,
We will unmute you.
Lynette is here, yes?
Yes, present.
Finally, yes.
Yay, Lynette.
All
Okay,
right.
Yael. Okay, Jan.
Here.
Oh dear, that's Jim. Hang on. Jim, hi. Okay, I'll send you a link. Give me a second, okay? Thanks. Okay, Lynette, Jan. We got
Present.
James,
Present.
we got Larry, we got Tim. And
Present.
Present.
And Jim will be here shortly if you just give me a second to send him the link. Okay, Trish, I'm done.
Okay. And we are recording, correct?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. All right. I do not have any announcements right now. The Zoom features, what we do ask for everyone is to raise your hand, which is part of the Zoom features and is listed on their agenda. So let's go to council member announcements. Anyone on the council that has an announcement for tonight? All right, I don't see any. Let's jump to the county and local agency reports, and we can start with the sheriff's report. Sergeant Langston. I did not see him come in. No, he is not here tonight. So let's do the highway patrol report, Captain Klingenberg, and I have seen you. You're right here.
Yeah, you've been asked to unmute. There you go.
Yeah, I did it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. So for the month of September, we had 7 collisions and 1 DUI arrest. I take it back. Oh no, yeah, that's right. 7 collisions with one DUI arrest. 2 of the 7 collisions were DUI drivers involved. Both of them were non-injury collisions, solo vehicles. One vehicle struck a street sign at Clark Valley Road and Los Osos Valley Road, or near there, 15 feet south of Los Osos Valley Road. The other one struck a power pole, also solo vehicle on Los Osos Valley Road, west of Turi Road. Of the non-DUI related collisions, the remaining 5 had a non-injury 2-vehicle collision on Los Osos Valley Road, half a mile east of Turi. Also a non-injury 2-vehicle collision on 7th Street, south of El Moro Avenue. An additional non-injury collision on Los Osos Valley Road, 146 feet east of Doris Avenue. That was a vehicle that struck a parked vehicle, also no injuries. The second to last collision, also a non-injury collision, also on Los Osos Valley Road at 9th Street, 2 vehicles. And then the final collision on Santa Ynez at intersection with 9th Street, that was a complaint of pain, injury, 2-vehicle collision. So those were the 7 collisions with 1 DUI arrest. Let's see, we also have done a few, just something else to talk about, done some focused enforcement on Los Osos Valley Road with our motorcycle unit. We have 2 new motorcycle officers that are assigned to the San Luis Obispo area. And we have occasionally joined forces with a couple of new motorcycle officers also assigned to the Santa Maria area. And we've brought them up and done some focused traffic enforcement on Los Osos Valley Road. My expectation is that we will do that periodically, just because they're a really good tool for us to use on Los Osos Valley Road. So with that, any questions that you have, I'm certainly available to answer them. And thank you again for the time.
I have a
Any
question.
Any questions from the committee, Deborah?
Yes, I have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
You said there was an accident on El Morro and 7th Street. Is that correct?
I believe so, yes.
Okay, and that was, could you say what that was again?
I sure can. Let's see here. So it was on 7th Street. It was 600 feet south of El Morro Avenue. We had a vehicle make an unsafe turning movement and struck another vehicle.
Okay, last Tuesday, there was an accident on that very same corner, 7th and El Morro.
Okay.
A vehicle stopped at the stop sign and a woman stepped into the crosswalk and was struck by the truck.
Okay.
She was taken to French Hospital and spent the night in the ICU. She had a brain bleed. So is that the sheriff, or is that something you should be aware of?
That is something that I would be aware of. What I'm doing is reporting on September's. I apologize. I probably didn't
Okay.
make that clear. These are for September. Next month, I will have all of October's. And
Okay.
I will have more details on that collision then. Or if you would like some more details on that, I can contact you directly, or you can call me at the office.
What I would like is detail about accidents on El Morro, especially around the school. I'm particularly concerned about safety, children going to Baywood Elementary, which is on El Morro between Santa Maria and El Morro. And 7th Street is a crosswalk for these children. And you've just mentioned an accident and I'm aware of another accident. I would like to know how many accidents occur there, what type of
Sure.
accidents they are, and really anywhere around the elementary school, I'm interested.
Okay. I'll put together some statistics for that. Yeah, and I'll have them ready for you next month.
Great. Thank you so much. I appreciate
Sure.
it.
No problem at all.
Any other council members? All right, I see a iPad hand up. I'm going to ask you to unmute and then please state your name since we only have iPad.
Hi, this is Jeff Krebs, resident here on 4th Street. After our last month meeting, I actually placed a call into one of your officers who actually helped quite a bit. I'm quite interested to kind of stay abreast of what speeding violations and even warnings, maybe a count or something like that. Mostly in the residential area I'm interested in, but obviously LOVR would probably be useful. I don't know if that's some sort of statistics you can continue to give us monthly, but I still see I think we have quite a bit of unsafe driving in our residential areas, and those kind of numbers might help us identify areas to focus on.
So speeding in the residential areas, just in general in Los Osos, just so I'm clear on what you're asking, right?
Well, yeah, I think the community wide would want to see all of Los Osos. I'm particularly interested in Baywood because that's where I live, but looking to be a little more broader, and also warnings. I mean, we're not out to necessarily get everybody, but
yeah, no, I appreciate that, and that for me to get statistics on verbal warnings, those are pretty difficult because those are not recorded into a database. Those are recorded individually by the officers that make those stops. But those don't go into, they would go into a database, but they would not be specifically to Los Osos. They would just be general verbal warnings that we give on a monthly basis.
Yeah, no, that's fine. I didn't know how granular you had it. Obviously you would have traffic citations then.
We do track the citations, and I can get citations by beat. I'm pretty sure I can divide it up to or between Los Osos Valley Road itself. And then also the greater community of Los Osos and Baywood. Those would most likely be included in the same area beat, we call it. So I can probably get statistics on that as well.
That'd be great. I think it'd be good to kind of keep a running total on something like that. Thank
Okay.
you.
Yep, sure, no problem.
Thank you very much, Captain Klingenberg. I think
Okay.
that is all the raised hands.
Thank you so much. I appreciate your time.
Thank
Have a great
you.
night.
Thanks.
Good night.
Next up is Carrie Brown from the County Planning Department. I know you're here. There you are. Okay, asked to unmute.
Good evening. Hope everyone's doing okay tonight. I got a couple things to report. As most of you know, the Los Osos vacation rental ordinance was on the Coastal Commission's agenda for October 15th, just this past October 15th, but it was postponed to November. The draft agenda is out, and it looks like it's scheduled for November 17th, but the staff report is not available yet. So we'll have to wait and see if they still have the same recommendation. And then also I wanted to give you an update on the Title 19 water offset study. We did receive one proposal for our for the RFP that we put out. We don't have a contract yet, but we do expect in the next few weeks. So more on that soon. The scope of work does include a public review draft. So we'll find out more about that soon. And that's all I really have tonight, but I'm here for questions.
Carrie, I have one question. At one time, the deadline to get this done and back to us was December 17th. Will that still be met?
I don't think so.
Okay. It just really makes a big, if we don't have that date, all of these projects coming forward, it's going to make a big deal with those. So it's going to make our job a lot harder. Do you know if can you give us an estimated date of when it could be accomplished?
Well, until the contract is signed and we have somebody working on it, I kind of would just give you an estimate, but it's probably going to be about 3 months once that's signed, but probably about 2.5 months for a public review draft.
Okay. All right, Sue is up next.
I figured out the answer to my question. Thanks.
Okay. Any other questions from the committee for Carrie? Any questions from the public for Carrie? I do not see any hands up. All right. So Supervisor Bruce Gibson, you are up, and I am looking forward to your discussion tonight. Let's get you and Blake unmuted.
Did that do it? I think I am unmuted. Madam
Yeah.
Chair and members, a pleasure to be with you as always this evening. Let me just touch on a few things of interest to Los Osos. First, maybe following up on the vacation rental ordinance, we did have a meeting with Coastal Commission staff, and I think that the item will come forward as recommended. No significant changes, and I am given to understand it's their November meeting, so I think that'll move forward. I will be in attendance and ready to speak at the October one. I was actually traveling, so this will make sure that we have both staff and me there to answer questions. So we'll see that moving forward, I think. On the matter of homelessness, the Kansas Avenue site continues to operate. I think most of you may know that Blake has been
how should we say, dragooned or shanghaied? I don't remember exactly the technical terminology, but he's spending nominally half his time, which amounts to about 37 hours a week, I think, on the day-to-day management of Kansas Avenue, a contribution that I greatly appreciate. We needed to just get on top of some details, and Blake's experience in the Emergency Operations Center during the COVID response really set him up well to do this. So he's out there solving problems and making things work, and he's welcome to add any details of that. But Kansas continues to work well. It is still at less than full capacity in its expanded state. And as of today, the no overnight camping ordinance goes into effect. And so further enforcement on what vehicles remain on Palisades Avenue can start. Signs did get posted. And if you go back to the staff report of late September, that has an indication of where those signs are. I'm not sure there's actually one on Palisades itself, but there doesn't need to be. There's a legal requirement that has been met with that. Appropriate notice is given to everyone who is, considered to be in violation. So I think we're going to start seeing some, again, continue the incremental progress on vehicles on Palisades. We still do have the question of folks encamped in tents, and that's something that's under consideration with our homeless services team. That poses sort of the next level of challenge for us, in that in general, those who are expert in this will have told us that those who are actually camped in tents are a little different population than those who have been sleeping in their vehicles. And they require a little more attention, some greater level of services, and just in general, it's a bit more challenging. And so we're continuing to work on that. There is ordinance in place that prohibits putting obstructions in road rights of way. And so there is facility to do that, but we do need to be able to indicate we have a place for those folks to go. So that's still under consideration. But, as we've been saying all along, this is an incremental progress. And it's been a few days since I drove down Palisades, but it looks to me like the number of vehicles has been reduced. I think
significantly.
We're making some progress here. So that is that. And then the last thing I will bring to your attention, which you may quite well already know. In fact, I didn't know whether it was on your agenda or not, but that's the effort at redistricting. So with the decennial census of 2020, which numbers just got released a little over a month ago to the county, it falls upon the Board of Supervisors to draw new lines for the supervisorial districts. As it turns out, the lines we have now actually do not have to be changed according to the standards that are put forward by state law. The population growth in this county over the last 10 years has been very small, averaging less than 1% a year. It has been reasonably even among districts, a little less so in the second district, but much of that is due to a different way of accounting for inmates in the California men's colony. And those inmates have been attributed back to their counties from which they came. So the second district shows some loss, but again, none of the districts are so out of whack that we would actually have to change anything. That's, I think, an important marker to remember, because as we got into that discussion this past Tuesday night, there were some fairly radical changes floated. One was part of the staff presentation, which it was put there simply to show the consequence of changing things in the city of San Luis Obispo, the effects of which ripple up through the North County and caused the first district, which is centered around Paso Robles and Templeton, to be extended all the way over to the coast to pick up Cambria and San Simeon. very, very radical change. There was an even more radical proposal put forward by a member of the public that instead of splitting the North Coast into two new supervisors district, proposed to split it into three. Los Osos would be in one district, Morro Bay would be in another district, and Cayucas, Cambria, San Simeon, and further north would be in a third district. And there were other fairly extreme consequences of doing that. So to be honest, this has raised a lot of concern on the North Coast. It has been represented by a single supervisor's district for 50 years or so. And the argument is being put forward that there is a community of interest there based on geography, based on coastal resources, based on a culture of coastal concern for coastal environment, based on connections with Highway 1 and so forth. So there is going to be a significant amount of public input, I think, coming in, as there should be. It's time for folks to get involved in this. Our next hearing on this, specifically on redistricting, is going to be November 19th, which is a Friday. That meeting will convene at 9 o'clock in the morning, where the next set of options or the next bit of public input and discussion will take place, leading to a meeting on November 30th, where the result of that meeting would be by majority vote of the board to have a single map put forward for introduction as an ordinance on December 7th, for action on December 14th. So the month of November is going to be a very busy month on this. And there's, again, growing concern about just how radically supervisorial districts should be modified. Again, I know that a number of you are paying attention. Ms. Morgan-Taylor was there and spoke, I think, quite eloquently to a number of issues that you all might find important, but I would urge you to take a good look at the maps being put forward, and again, understand that it is a simple majority vote of the board that decides how this goes. Again, it has to be matched up against state regulations. Those are all spelled out on a piece of the county's website, and it's fairly easy to get to if you haven't been there already. It's slocounty.ca.gov/redistricting. So happy to answer any questions and on these or any other topics.
All right, Jim.
Bruce, back to the homeless. The tent camping is the most obnoxious in Palisades. One guy is just spread out over about 20 yards and he's got all kinds of debris and stuff. I think, at one time I counted maybe 40 some people on Palisades. I think I counted today about 8 or 9.
Mm-hmm.
But the two campers are the most egregious. And as you say, they have to be handled differently.
Yeah.
Can you give us a clue as to how that might play out?
Well, so under discussion, I have brought this up to our staff repeatedly.
Yeah.
That it's the creation of Kansas Avenue and its expansion.
Perfect.
All very good things, but what have you done for us lately? And that's I have to disguise my voice when I call them on the phone, or disguise my number somehow, because I think they're finding me
They don't want to hear from
annoying. What we have to meet the requirements of Martin versus Boise is a reasonable alternative place for those folks to go.
Yeah.
And again, what the folks who work in homeless services tell us is that they are a population with more challenging issues to deal with. More severe mental health issues, more severe addiction issues in some instances, behavioral issues, histories, a number of other things. So it's not as simple as necessarily as marking a place on the ground at Kansas Avenue and say, go ahead and pitch your tent there. They also don't have quite the transportation resources that folks in vehicles do. So there's a number of those issues to be worked out. That's, as we get into enforcing on vehicles, the enforcement on tents is the next thing up. So we'll get on that. And we need to, we're in the process of hiring a program manager for homeless
Be
services.
creative, Bruce, be creative.
Yeah, exactly. That's the whole thing. Relentless and creative. So relentless incremental progress. That's what, that's our watchword here.
Yeah.
And I don't know if Blake wants to add anything on recent, recent events. You're welcome to, sir.
No, I think you summed it up pretty well. I mean, I'm happy to get into any specifics on kind of the day-to-day at Kansas, but mostly it's been, managing the expansion and then just trying to improve the resources that we have available. One thing that's shortcoming, just for everyone to know, on November 1st, RTA is making the bus stop there an hourly stop in both directions, whereas previously it was someone had to call to have the bus come. Now it will just be there in both directions every hour. So again, just these little things to try to improve, resource out there.
That's awesome. Deborah, how is next as for the council members?
Yeah, I have a question, Supervisor Gibson. If it's not necessary to change the districts, what is the motivation for making any changes at all?
Well, it would, it remains to be seen what individual supervisors have to say. It was notable at the meeting on Tuesday that only myself and to a slightly lesser extent Supervisor Ortiz-Legg expressed any direction that we would like to see maps headed. My point being that we have to compare any map to the existing districts that don't need to be changed. I mean, don't need to be changed significantly. We can certainly work at the edges of the districts to improve the population balance a little bit if we want, but the basic structure of them has worked for quite a long time and is balanced in every way of population, of voting age population, of what we call protected groups or minority populations. The Hispanic population is evenly balanced and not split up in a way that would dilute their ability to vote, just by the distribution of population. So we have to compare any proposed change to that, in my mind, to ask what's going on. But outside of Supervisor Ortiz-Legg and myself, none of the other three supervisors issued any indication of a policy direction on forming new maps. They, in fact, encouraged more maps to be submitted by the public. And as I said, the most radical map that I saw was submitted by a member of the public. He had public commenters there to speak favorably of his map. And it's not clear at all what the other three supervisors' reaction to that map is. I made it pretty clear that was absolutely unacceptable to me because it splits up the community of interest of the North Coast. As to the motivation, I won't speculate at great detail, but I think I heard somebody, perhaps Mr. Stanfill, suggest that there's political advantage to be gained to changing the way district lines are drawn. And that actually is not, it runs contrary to the spirit of the state regulations. But on the other hand, it requires the public to articulate these objections. And that's why I brought this subject up.
And Supervisor Gibson, we do have this on the agenda for our last item. Because after I looked at the draft map A and the draft map B, those looked okay, with some tweaks. But when I looked at draft map C, which removes Cambria and San Simeon and adds that to the Paso district, It just makes no sense to me geographically to take some of our coastal towns and move them into the wine country. Just doesn't quite make sense. So we are going to talk about that at the very end of today's
Okay.
meeting, so that I feel
I
like
will-
it's probably a good idea to write a letter to the county/state,
Okay.
Well,
I will hang in here. I may nip out to do one thing, but I'll try to stay close and see it. Let me just make one other point about this. We've gotten some public comment, which was very, very, very flattering to me, because some of these public comments were that we don't want the district boundaries drawn because we want to retain Bruce as our supervisor. That's not what this is about. This is about you all as residents and citizens of this county. It is a fundamental aspect of our democracy to group people within appropriate boundaries, so that your voice can be fairly heard in selecting whoever it is that you want to be your supervisor. And these boundaries set in this process this year are going to be in place for 10 years. So again, this isn't about individuals. This is about your ability to participate in democracy. So I just want to make sure that that's clear.
perfect. Okay, next up is Dave and Bev, and then we'll go to Patrick.
And are we doing 3 minutes on the comments here, or?
No, that will be public comments, but please don't go 5 or 10. If you could keep it to 2 or 3, that would be great. Dave and Bev? I think
We may have
Putting
lost
hand
them.
down, so.
we lost them.
Well,
All
they're
right.
muted. They are muted, so maybe they're talking, but we can't hear them.
I unmuted them.
They haven't unmuted themselves.
Okay,
I
we
don't
will
see
ask them
them.
again.
Here I am. Can you hear me?
There you are. Okay.
Okay. Yeah, before the end of the meeting, Mr. Gibson, those of us who watched the hearing on redistricting observed the apparent groundswell of attention to the citizen contributed plan. Could you comment on the idea that San Luis Obispo City should be unified under one supervisor?
Well, only to the extent is that I have heard only 3 people in the entire time we've been working on redistricting. I've only heard three people who identify themselves as San Luis Obispo residents indicate that San Luis should be unified. There were a lot of comments that should be the case, but they came from people who lived elsewhere. What we find is that the elected leaders of the city of San Luis are fine with the way the supervisors districts represent their city. It's been that way for quite a long time. In the last redistricting, it actually went from 4 supervisors to 3 supervisors. And I guess I would comment that there are 2 parts to it. One of them is that many folks in San Luis Obispo see their community interest as the county as a whole, because the San Luis is the economic hub, the government hub, the cultural hub, and folks commute in from all over the county to go to work there, effectively doubling the size of the city on any given workday. So there's that opinion that I've heard voiced by citizens of that community, and it also is sort of a natural result of forming districts that respect the geography of the area. If you look at some of the controlling geographic features of the Coast Range and other, the Cuesta Grade, the southern part of the county, as you assemble communities of interest in various parts of the county, San Luis Obispo being the biggest single concentration of population is challenging to try to lump together. If you did lump it together, as some of these maps have, you get very strange consequences elsewhere in the county. And so, so if you look at the North Coast as a community of interest, the North County is a community of interest, the South County is a community of interest. As you work toward the center, you end up with having to distribute the population of San Luis Obispo City into three supervisors districts. And again, no one in city leadership, no one in the business community, no one in the academic community has ever complained that that's a problem. So they aren't feeling abused by that arrangement.
Yeah, it seems to me that clearly the city is dependent on the surrounding neighborhoods, and so they ought not to be isolated. But
right. Well, yeah, one of the connections I observe is that we have a tremendous amount of commuting from North County into the city of San Luis Obispo. And you look at how much money Caltrans put into improving 101 along the Cuesta grade to facilitate that commute. That was what, 15 or 20 years ago now, I suppose. But there is a natural connection there. So I think that's some of the reasoning that I have heard on that point.
Thank you. Next up is Patrick's iPad.
Thank you. Supervisor Gibson, as you know, in 2018, the census did a community survey and listed the population of Los Osos quite a bit over 16,000. If you Google population of Los Osos, it too comes up with over 16,000. And if you drive down the streets of Los Osos, you'll see many, many, many more cars parked in the driveways and off the streets than there were a decade ago. And taking into consideration the damage that the last administration did to census taking, how confident are you that the current census is accurate?
Patrick, I'm pretty confident. I haven't heard any specific critique of the numbers coming from anybody. I haven't heard of any litigation being filed over discrepancies of the census, and that was a concern. And in the end, at the level that we're operating, we have to accept those numbers. So I guess I haven't really given that much thought, but haven't heard anything to the contrary.
Okay, and you would probably not be in favor of having like the Carrizo Plain be part of District 2?
That's just a long drive, Patrick. That's just a very long drive.
Okay, thank you.
All right, next up is Chris. I've asked you to unmute.
Got it.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Gibson, is this the right forum to bring up? Well, thanks for the work on the homeless population on Pasadena. I'm very empathetic about that. I've done a lot of work with the homeless. However, being involved with having young children in my life and involved with the community center, is there a way to request a more scheduled patrol through the park? We can't go to the park anymore. Last time we drove through to try to go to the park, just in one pass through the parking lot to see if we could go in there, there was a woman pulling her dress up, urinating in the parking lot, and another gentleman shooting up. So it's a dangerous situation, and it's just a real shame to lose such a beautiful facility to the community.
Yeah, this is absolutely the right place to discuss that. We know that there have been significant public health and safety impacts of the folks who have camped and occupied space in the Palisades area, and I'm certainly aware of concerns raised of people who want to use the park, who want to use the library, community center, tennis courts, go to the Catholic Church, library, all of those things. We get that, and that's the balancing act. We need to extend services to the folks who are in this situation, just from a humanitarian and moral standpoint, and try to provide them the resources to get them on a path to permanent housing. At the same time, we need to make our public spaces safe and inviting, clean, healthy, and otherwise, available to to all. That's the nature. And this encampment has occurred at at the place where the single biggest concentration of public spaces are in the community of Los Osos. So I totally get that. The actual, how shall I say this, incident level concerns with public safety are really, in the hands of the sheriff's department and their associated and their associates. And when I say associates, that's something that I think we can take some pride in, that we understand that folks who are homeless present specific challenges to law enforcement and to public safety in general. The key to addressing these has become clear is to understand the individual situation of each of those people. We tend to, as humans, to want to lump people into categories, that homelessness is caused by addiction or mental health or whatever it is. And the reality is much more complex than that. And so law enforcement is out there with, folks in uniforms who carry guns, but the folks who interact with our homeless folks do way more than that. And they bring along psychiatric technicians. They bring along social workers. They bring folks who can try to connect with the folks to see what we can do to provide them services that will correct these problems or take these problems in the right direction. If there are specific public safety issues on any given day, please call the sheriff's department. If it is a threat to human life, 911. If it is a lesser, urgent situation, the sheriff's dispatch number, which is 781-4550, I think. Blake may know that off the top of his head. But that's the way we would approach public safety issues there.
Well, thank you for that. I just wondered if the officers made a routine drive through, it would just kind of,
and they do,
instill kind of a feeling.
They're out there on a regular basis. We are lucky to have the coast station in Los Osos, so they have a little bit more concentration and a little bit more effort. But again, they can't be there when every difficult situation arises. So the public's interaction is obviously part of the deal.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions for Supervisor Gibson? I do not see any other hands up. All right. Thank you so much. And we'll probably be calling at you at the very end.
Okay.
Sorry about that. We should have put it closer on the agenda for you.
Thank you.
All right. Next up, CSD report. Would that be Chuck? Okay, let me find you on here. There you are. Asking you to unmute.
If you are in fact the CSD reporter this week, Chuck, don't mean to put you on the spot.
I don't know who is, so if you are, unmute yourself.
It's Troy, I think, this week.
It's Troy? Okay, let me try to find Troy.
This month, excuse me.
He has his
Troy.
hand up.
He has his
Trish.
hand up.
Oh, I found him. Thank you. Okay. All right, Troy.
Good evening. Can everybody hear me?
Yes.
Awesome. Thank you. CSD update for this month. The CSD has been going through districting efforts. As you're probably aware, that we were currently under an at-large voting system with the VCRA enacted in 2001 allows legal challenges for at-large systems, which could also lead to automatic costs of $30,000 if an action was filed by district residents. So the CSD has decided to avoid this expense and start creating voting districts in time for the November 2022 election. So far, we've had 3 public hearings and we have 2 more scheduled. So November 4th and December 2nd, we have started doing draft scenario maps by the CSD consultant and are available on our website. If you have any questions around the districting in those efforts, please contact Ron Munns, our general manager. Update from our Park and Rec Advisory Committee. We've successfully completed the Farrell Avenue Pathway Project. So on the heels of that, we are starting to reinitiate the effort around establishing a community dog park. There's a lot of work that has to be done around that. So we are encouraging interested parties and public comment to attend our next Parks and Rec Committee meeting, which will be December 14th. You can find that meeting on our website. If you have questions, again, Ron can help you there. Also, our Emergency Services Advisory Committee. So anybody that's interested in our fire and emergency medical services, at our next committee meeting on November 18th, we'll have the relatively new chief, Eddie Moore. He'll be providing a presentation on our future emergency services in the county, and specifically Los Osos. You can go to our website again for more information regarding the meeting. Water infrastructure updates. Program A, the 8th Street Aquifer Well Project. It's been on hold for several years, but it's finally moving forward. The district awarded a contract to complete the well's pumping systems to Hartzell General Engineering Contractor. Unfortunately, some supply chain issues for certain electrical components has delayed construction, but we're anticipating completion of that after the first of the year. The well will add about 125 acre feet of water production to our system. Program C, well project update. This is moving forward. The environmental work is completed and approved. The minor use permit needed from the county is under review. The district has submitted a grant application to the state to hopefully help fund a portion to the estimated $2.1 million project. The construction of the well and pipeline to connect to the water system could take up to 2 years to complete. And that's the CSD report for this evening.
Thank you so much. Any questions from the committee? Okay, any questions from the community? No. All right, thank you so much for your report, Troy.
Thank you.
Chamber of Commerce report, Lynette.
Yes, I'm hoping Jim will be able to jump in here. We're actually doing Oktoberfest this year, only it's October Feast because we can't hold a event down on 2nd Street. So what it will be is a drive-through on Sunday, October 31st to pick up German barbecue and growlers. I had to look up what a growler was. It's beer. Anyway,
24 ounces of beer, and then
a lot of beer. I don't know if we have any tickets left. That is the question for Jim.
yeah, the questions are available at the chamber office. Chamber is open from 11 to 2, Tuesday through Friday.
Well, the only day that's going to work is tomorrow. So
Yeah.
11 to 2.
11 to 2, come by and you can get it.
Okay, good. And after that, Nardoni's is still selling tickets, I believe.
Yeah, yeah.
So Sunday between 12 and 3 at South Bay Community Center. And then the rest are save the dates. We're going to come back this year with our traditional events. Light Up Los Osos sometime at the beginning of December. We don't have a date yet when the contest starts. It's people's houses being decorated for the holidays. And there was a prize awarded last year that was pretty cool. So we're doing that again. Christmas tree lighting. We got rid of the Charlie Brown Christmas tree. So there's going to be a regular, normal looking Christmas tree at the corner of LOVR and Palisades, Friday, December 3rd. As with everything, please check our Facebook page for what time that will be. I don't really know, but the big event is on Saturday, December 11th. The Christmas parade is returning. So please check out our Facebook page. I just don't have the information yet. We're on Facebook at LOBP Chamber. So look up LOBP Chamber, and that's us on Facebook. And if you have any questions, I'll answer them, I hope.
All right, any questions for Lynette? Anyone from the public have questions? All right, you're off the hook, Lynette.
Moving on.
All right, do we have any public comment for items not on the agenda? Any, I see a hand up, Patrick iPad. Okay, you have 3 minutes.
Thank you. I'd just like to update real quickly on the last BMC meeting that we just had. BMC staff recommended a change in the sustainable yield metric. They dropped it down quite a bit. It was being used at 2,760 acre feet yearly, and it's been dropped down to 2,380 acre feet yearly. They've done this because the last 6 years at that last metric was still letting seawater intrusion come in. And so they're trying to stop that and somewhat reverse it. One thing that I did talk about at that meeting was just some calculations I did on unmetered wells, and I used the Sea Pines Golf Course actually on that. They had a table that showed that the Sea Pines Golf Course was estimated, and metered or unmetered wells, you can only estimate the amount of usage that they have. We don't really know how much that is, but they estimated Sea Pines was drawing 50 acre feet a year out of their aquifer, and they were also getting 30 acre feet a year from recycled water. So that is 80 acre feet a year that they are using to keep their golf course green and all their ponds filled. 80 acre feet a year is actually 26 million gallons. And if you take 365 days a year and figure out the average, that's 71,000 gallons a day that they are using to keep their greens nice and green. So that's just something that we need to be aware of, is that unmetered wells can use as much water as they want. We don't know exactly how much that is. And there's no metering, so we can't really judge consistently and accurately on what use that they're having. So that's all I have to say about that. Thank you very much.
Thank you. All right, iPad, go ahead.
Hello?
Hello.
Oh, okay, great. This is Jeff Krebs again on 4th Street. I guess the first thing to know is, how do I get my name changed from iPad to my real name? I see everybody else has real names on there, but I can figure that out later. The issue I've got is, I know our TNC hasn't really been meeting. It hasn't been active for quite a while. And so I'm really interested to know what kind of engagement Locac is intending with regard to the bikeways plan. They're setting up a new ranking methodology for projects. And I listened in on, I think, on their September meeting where they talked about it, and I investigated a little bit to find out what this methodology was. And frankly, it's not going to make any difference to what they've got in there today for, I think, a residential community such as us. But it's actually been in place a couple of years and had been worked on that way, except it hasn't been approved. And so they're having to recycle that, I think. And I think their plan is in November to either discuss to go forward with the current plan they have in place. But somehow I think our community needs to be engaged in this. And there's particular reasons in my mind that because ATPs become so much more important in communities and a focus, that perhaps some new methodology needs to be put in to give communities such as Los Osos and other incorporated communities some advantage to getting some of their projects in place. So anyway, I'll leave that with you to figure out what you might want to do. Similarly, with Parks and Rec, we haven't seen any change since 2006. There was a question on the new multi-use path to the Bikeways Committee, and the person was just referred back to go look at their list. Well, when you start thinking about it, and I thought about it later, frankly, it won't be on parkways or on bikeways because it's a pathway. And so how are we making sure we're getting ourselves heard? So it seems like we need to be engaged with those two groups. That's what I got.
All right, thank you very much, Jeff. And I'm sure during the reports from Jan and Deborah on traffic and circulation, you'll hear something. All right. Any other public comment not on the agenda? All right, let's approve the minutes from September 23rd. Any changes, anything for the minutes?
I move approval.
Thank you. Do we have a second?
I'll
Lynette
second.
seconds it. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any nays? All right, the minutes pass. Great, let's go to the Locac committee reports. The treasurer's report.
Good evening.
That would be Deborah.
Yes, so my treasurer's report is actually a reprise of last month's report because we still do not have access to our bank account at Mechanics Bank. So very quickly, our bank balance is $1,742. We have some outstanding expenses that haven't been paid. We do have a check from the county for $1,461, which I have not deposited yet. And that gives us a total of $2,894. I would like to tell you happily that I see light at the end of the tunnel here, that we did receive just recently a letter from the IRS confirming that we will be operating as a 501c4. This is what the bank has been asking us for. We have an appointment on Tuesday to go in and sign new signature cards. And if I do one thing as your treasurer, I will ensure that there is never, ever a time when there is only one signer on the checking account again. We will be having myself, Trish Bartel, and Sue Morgenthaler. All of us will be signing so that there is never an opportunity for this to happen in the future. I do have an outstanding invoice from the chamber. I would like permission to pay that. And also anybody else who has invoices that they've been collecting, bills that they've been paying. I know Lynette, you've been paying for the website and Sandra's been paying for the Zoom. I need you to email me those so that I can reimburse you for those expenses. So is there any issue with me paying this invoice to the chamber? It's a $100.
I have a stupid question. We're not a business. Why do we?
Organization in the community.
We're an
Is a member of the
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
chamber. Key was South Bay Community Center. You remember the chamber? Yeah.
So
chamber is the one organization in town whose job it is to make this a better place to live, work, do business.
Jim, you can be expecting a check from me soon.
Soon.
Thank you.
Just not right away. we have to sign a few things first. Okay.
Yes, so Lynette, Sandra, and anybody else, I don't know anybody else who has an expense, but if you do have some kind of expense, please make sure you get it to me so that I can get current. I would appreciate that. Thank you. That's my report.
Go ahead, Lynette.
On my invoices, one is just to keep the website alive, but I've also had to spend some money, for which I did not ask permission, on some security issues. So I think what I would prefer doing, rather than sending the invoices for payment, I would like to discuss what they were and see if Locac wants to pay them. I mean, I felt I had to do it because, you know, that time the county got locked out of our website, that wasn't so great. And we have had some issues since then. So I just want to make sure that Locac is aware of what I have spent money on, and to make sure, I mean, you know, if you don't want to pay it, that's fine. But I really feel like we need some security on that website, and we didn't have it.
I think you're right.
We need the security. No, you did it all right, Lynette.
It is a fact of life today that we must have security on our websites and our cybersecurity. So I would absolutely be in favor of paying that.
Me too.
Okay.
Absolutely. Absolutely. All right, committee reports, if there's no other questions for Deborah. Okay, first committee report, land use. Larry. Is your phone not working?
Oh, unmute it.
Oh, here, I gotcha.
Okay, thanks. I had the dogs barking in the background, so I had to mute myself. Yeah, we had a couple of projects come to us at our land use meeting. I'll be discussing them later. We have one on the consent agenda and a couple on the regular agenda to get the input from Locac on that. And we do have a few more projects coming up at our Monday meeting, which is going to be November 1st in a couple days. We're trying to get this in because Locac's got to decide when they're going to have their holiday meeting between November, Thanksgiving, and Christmas in December. Locac's going to have to come up with another date to have a meeting. And I wanted to get the Monday's issues discussed and talked about so we could have them ready for whenever Locac does have their meeting.
Okay. Sounds good. Thank you very much. Traffic and circulation, Jan and Deborah, you're both.
Yeah, this is Jen Harper. And yes, we haven't been having meetings. There hasn't been anything coming from our liaison. I contact him monthly to see if there's anything upcoming. I understand the concern of Mr. Krebs, and there is there are two District 2 Bicycle Advisory Council people. The one I know is Josh Olacek, and he and I interact. So I'm sure if there's something that needs to be brought to Locac, Josh will do that. If you're interested, you need to go to the Bicycle Advisory Council meeting. They have a website on the county so that you can follow it if you're concerned about that. And you know, the way they work is the interest of the community. So you have to participate. So until something comes up from Joshua or the COVID comes through and we can start having in-person, or we'll have Zoom meetings if something comes up, we are on a hiatus. And if there's an issue that you notice, signage, vegetation growth, the county number to report those kinds of things, because you know we're the ones that see it, we're the citizens out here, is 781-5252. That's to the county. If there's speeding issues that you're concerned about, you need to call the local sheriff station. And then, no, speeding is the
Highway Patrol.
Highway Patrol, thank you. And the sheriff is parking, or you know, things that you notice along the streets that you find you want more information about. And they're both of those agencies are very helpful, and so is the county. So Deborah, do you have anything to add?
Deborah might be muted. Asked to unmute.
There we go. Thank you. Here, let me turn my camera back on. Oh, there I am. Actually, thank you, Jan. I did attend the last Bicycle Advisory Committee meeting, and it's actually very exciting. They are thinking about converting into what they call active transportation committee. I don't understand all that entails on a state level, but I believe it allows them to access more funding. And this is an area that I'm particularly interested in, and I would like to see if there's any appetite for Locac to start a subcommittee that is concerned with what we call now active transportation, which is cycling, walking, pedestrians, promoting the active lifestyle, which is in our Los Osos community plan. And as Jeff said, we have a perfect place for this type of active lifestyle, but yet we don't really have the trails and the bike lanes and pedestrian lanes to accommodate our active lifestyle. So I'd like to hear what Locac, what the members of Locac have to say about perhaps having a committee that addresses this particular issue for our community.
I think it's a great, great idea. And I would like to be on that subcommittee and participate that. I'm walking the neighborhoods every single day. So it would be amazing to be on that and see if we can make some change. Any other committee members that would like to? Sue.
I think that's a fantastic idea. And I know there are some community members that are as you, very, very involved and would like very much to see something like this happen. And I would love it if you started a subcommittee to do this. I'm all for it.
Great. Yeah, I've met with some of the people in the community who walk areas, especially down around Sweet Springs, 4th Street. As Jeff mentioned, 4th Street is a big issue. And so I think there are things that can be done. Right now, I've been really concentrating about the elementary school in Baywood. We have a lovely path on El Moro that goes from the elementary school all the way to the middle school. However, from the Baywood Elementary down to like 3rd Street, we have no really safe walkways for children to go to school. And I was at the elementary school last week meeting with the principal. I took a picture of the little bikes and even a little scooter that the kids were using to get to school. But we already know that we have accidents on El Moro and 7th Street. And El Moro is a highly trafficked street from the 2nd Street down in Baywood all the way up to 12th Street. So, and this is where the kids are going to school. I'm trying to wrap this all together because there's funding for safe walking to school. SlowCog provides funding for this. I think we can get something going there, and then we can branch out from there and create more and more safe places to walk, safe places to ride your bike.
Perfect. Any, Sue, one more time.
Yeah, I thank you. You just reminded me when you were talking about SlowCog. I was talking to them a month or so ago, and it's very important that her first question to me was, are you just talking to me as a person, or are you representing an organization? I mean, it was very clear to me that we have to be an organization to get through somehow to these funds and SlowCog and to be taken seriously. So to be a committee of Locac is of utmost importance, I think.
Great, thank you. We have Jeff iPad.
You can unmute.
There we go.
I did.
I got it. Thank you. Yeah, thanks for putting the attention to this. Just a couple of other observations that we can throw into the pot. In 2018, I learned some of this when we were doing our community plan work, but in 2018, we actually, SlowCog put together, or we got a grant for some sidewalk, 1 block worth on El Moro. And I think we discussed this in traffic circulation when Public Works was there, and it kept getting deferred. And the last time I think we spoke, we met with Mike Britton, which was probably over a year ago. He said it was his word. I don't know exactly his words, but he was pretty definite. It was going to happen in 2021, if I'm not mistaken. I haven't seen anything. I haven't heard anything. So obviously that's kind of gotten lost again. So anyway, there was funding for something in 2018 that just keeps rolling forward. The other observation that I'll make, and when I attended the BAC meeting, there was a reference to Avila was doing their community plan, and comments were due like within a week. And it was interesting to me to hear that was kind of a spontaneous comment that that committee had not actually looked at a community plan to see what their needs were to get it incorporated in or even comment on it, which leads me to believe, and maybe Josh looked at ours, I don't know, but I'm not sure we really got our community plan needs factored in there because they don't seem to have a process per se. That's all I had.
All right, thank you. Any other questions, concerns, thoughts for Deborah on the subcommittee? Nope. All right, thank you very much. Let's go to Yael's not here for trees and landscaping. Sandra's excused from outreach. So let's start with James with Ad Hoc Water Committee.
Great. Am I going first, Deborah?
Yes, James, why don't you go? Let me just introduce what we're going to do here. We have a really great report for you today from the Ad Hoc Water Group. James is going to present an overview of information that will help us all understand the basin a little bit better. And then I'm going to give you an update from the Basin Management Committee meeting that was held yesterday. So I'll let you start, James.
Thanks. Yeah, so the Basin Management Committee in its September meeting released draft chloride and water level metrics from spring of 2021. So I was going to present those metrics because they're hot off the press and they provide an indication of the most recent measurements of health of the basin. And before I get into that information, I was just going to provide a very high level overview of kind of how seawater intrusion works and how the metrics relate to seawater intrusion. So I'm going to share my screen. I've got 7 slides I put together. I'll try and get this over with in 7 minutes, but I hope I think it'll be insightful. Let's see. Can you guys see my screen?
Yeah.
Great. So just, in terms of how seawater intrusion works, this is a really simple schematic of cross-section of a coastal aquifer. You've got the ocean on the right side of the screen. You've got an aquifer and land on the left side of the screen. And essentially, freshwater in the ocean exist in the aquifer basically in hydraulic balance, and that hydraulic balance is based on the density of freshwater relative to the density of seawater. Seawater is more dense because it contains a greater salts content. And so the location of where the interface between freshwater and saltwater is based on the elevation of freshwater above sea level. And so in this picture, sea level is this dashed line. So if you reduce the elevation of fresh water at a given point, such as, can you guys see my mouse?
No.
Yes, we can.
Oh, yeah.
Reduce the elevation at a point, this seawater wedge is going to intrude inland. And similarly, if you raise the elevation at this same point of fresh water, the seawater wedge is going to move out to sea. And so essentially what the BMC would like to do is raise freshwater elevation such that it stops the seawater intrusion wedge from intruding further inland. One other thing to note is that, there's an interface between freshwater and saltwater here, and that interface can be very sharp, meaning that, the thickness of change from fresh to salt is small, or it can be very, very wide. It can be as much as half a kilometer in width, and it can be variable throughout the aquifer. And that's relevant because oftentimes, and the BMC does this, they measure chloride concentrations as an indicator of where seawater has intruded to. And the thickness of that interface can make it difficult to really well evaluate where the interface is and how far the intrusion has occurred. And the last point I want to make is this notation here that shows H and 40 times H. And this is referencing the Geibin-Herzberg relation, which says that the elevation of freshwater above sea level, whatever that elevation is, you've got 40 times that in freshwater below sea level before you reach saltwater. And it's based on the density of freshwater versus saltwater. But that relation is essentially how the water level metric was devised by the BMC. So they've said that we want water levels at these key wells to be 8 feet above sea level. And at 8 feet, based on this relation, we know that it will be effective in stopping seawater from intruding further inland. All right, one other figure is just kind of how wells can affect seawater intrusion. If you've got a well that's pumping too close to the ocean, it can essentially suck salt water in, and it's often a mixture of fresh and salt water, and it can suck it in. And this one here is typically what people think of. You can also get this vertical intrusion if you've got a well with a longer well screen such as this. And, confusing the issue is that you can see wells that are located further inland experiencing worse seawater intrusion than wells that are closer to sea. And it just depends on the hydraulics of the aquifer, the depth of the well, the location of the well screen, et cetera. And I guess this is relevant because we often measure chloride concentrations, and those measurements of chloride concentration can be a little bit confusing. The ultimate thing driving all of this is maintaining adequate elevations, freshwater elevation. So the chloride concentration will follow the elevation. If you get the elevation, you're gonna be effective in mitigating seawater intrusion. And then just to round out the conceptual overview, the previous two examples I showed were unconfined aquifers, water table aquifers. Our system, the lower aquifer is essentially a confined aquifer, meaning that there's this confining unit up here that stops the elevation of the groundwater from actually going up. And so what's being measured is the elevation that water would reach if it weren't confined. So just a kind of technical point of clarification. So on to the monitoring data. So this is a map from the 2020 annual report showing location of wells that are monitored. All the dots on here have water level measurements, and then the red dots have water level and water quality, including chloride concentrations. The chloride metrics are based on LA8 right here, LA10. LA10 is doubly weighted, LA11 and LA12, and it's basically the average or weighted average of the chloride concentrations measured in these wells. And LA10, although it's double weighted, has had issues with potential leakage from the upper aquifer, which has lower chloride concentrations and has confused interpretation of the data. So this chloride metric, and the BMC is well aware of this and trying to fix it, is a little bit dubious, I think. And then water level metric is based on LA 2 and 3 out here on the sand spit, 11, and I can't see my notes. Oh yeah, 14 and 16, 16 and 14 right here. So on to the results. These are the draft results from spring of 2020. The vertical axis on the left in blue is the groundwater elevation metric. The vertical axis in red on right is the chloride concentration metric. And so for this elevation metric, 8 up here at the top is where we're trying to get to. And this most recent measurement from spring of 2021 is an increase relative to the previous measurement. So this is, a good sign for the health of the basin. And as I said earlier, chloride will follow water levels. So it's a small increase, but an increase nonetheless. And it kind of follows the trend of the previous years, except for the previous closest 2 years. No, it's only one data point, but it's going in a good direction. The chloride concentration metric shown here, it also decreased, which is in the direction that we want it to go. Though when you look at the results from the individual wells that are included in the metric, it's not quite as positive looking. So what I've shown here is the 4 wells, LA 8, 11, 12, and 10, and their change relative to the previous year. And LA 8, 11, and 5 all went up relative to the previous year. So the wrong direction. And then this LA 10 well, which has had kind of dubious measurements, it went down and is double weighted. So, you know, it's, I think, although the metric is down, I think it should have an asterisk next to it. Let's see. And I think that's all I'm going to say about that. And the other thing to note is the time period over which these measurements occur. It's been about 1975 until present day for the water level metric, and about 1980 to present day for the chloride metric. And that's relevant for this next slide, which shows, these are called hydrographs, basically the change in water elevation through time from about 1975 through present day. And these are, some of these are the same wells that are used in the elevation metric, and some are different. Mean sea level is shown here at 0, but you know, one of the takeaways is that over this 40-year time period, elevations today are similar as they were back in 1980. So there has not been a horrific drop in water elevations over this 40-year time period. And the other thing to note is that since about 2010, we've seen a slow but gradual increase in water levels over the previous 10 years, which is encouraging. And I think the BMC report estimated that the increase is about 0.4 feet per year in these lower aquifer wells. And then this is the last slide. This is the upper aquifer water levels, kind of same concept. And the reason I'm showing this is that the lower aquifer is recharged by the upper aquifer. And so, if you saw dramatically decreasing elevations in the upper aquifer, it might mean bad news for the lower aquifer, but that's not really what we're seeing. We're seeing that things in the upper aquifer have stayed pretty uniform over the previous, 40-ish years. So in terms of the water levels, we need to get them up. They are not near the metric, but they haven't dropped off anything dramatic in the last 40 years. And if anything, they've increased a bit in the last 10 years. And that's all I have.
Thank you very much, James.
Yeah.
Any questions from the committee for James? I can't see my participants. Let me see. I don't. Larry, did you have a question? Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Your hand's up.
Yeah. In all this, is there a comparison on the population of our town to these water levels and stuff? Because I know the population keeps going up. And so you would think these calculations would go down, but they don't seem to.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's important to remember that per capita water use, at least as measured by the purveyors, has decreased substantially through time. So even if the population has increased, that may be offset by the water savings implemented by a lot of folks, but I don't know that for sure. I don't know what the population change numbers are through time.
Okay, but I want to agree with you. I think the water saving has help the community incredibly a lot, and it shows it here. Things aren't getting worse; they're actually getting better.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think I want my message to be that things are getting better. I think it's complicated, and that it's not. The narrative is complicated, but the water level data is at least encouraging. The chloride data, on the other hand, is a little bit discouraging. But I think, and the physics support, that chlorides will follow the water levels.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions for James from council or from the public?
I think Lindy
Okay.
has it. I'm trying to stop sharing.
Okay, I've got Patrick.
Thank you. Just to answer Larry's question also, the sustainable yield for the basin is an estimate. And the sustainable yield also dictates the basin yield metric. In the basin plan, it states anything under 80 of the basin yield metric means that there is a safety of margin for the community, meaning there's more water in the basin that can be used or has been saved. 80 means it's just you're using 80% of the sustainable yield of whatever that was estimated to be. So the sustainable yield has been lowered, as I said before, to 2380. And that's because the other previous yield was too much and was still allowing seawater intrusion to come in. In changing or lowering the sustainable yield, you're also going to be changing the basin yield metric. And at 2380, the basin yield metric would be 84, meaning there is not a margin of safety for the community. And that's the direction that they're going. The sustainable yield is split up between the purveyors, and the purveyors have certain percentage of acre feet of year that they can pull out for their customers. And I don't remember all the exact percentages, but I think like S&T has 4% and Golden State and CSD have 38% or something like that. And, you know, that's kind of the way that goes. Obviously, private wells aren't metered at all. So it's all up to water customers to be saving the water. Unfortunately, because the estimate has been higher for a safe, sustainable yield, it set the basin yield metric at 73. And the county has been saying in that time, well, that shows that there is a margin of safety or that there's more water to be used. And that's how they've been using their Title 19 to be able to give more building permits, because they've been saying, well, the basin. Excuse, did you have a question? I'm sorry.
I think that was Jim talking.
Okay. So it's just that there's been excess water supposedly out there, and the community has been saving that, but the county has been using their Title 19 to be able to permit more building going on. So I don't know if that answers Larry's question at all, but that's a little bit more about how the basin's working.
Thank you. Deborah, you had your hand up for a moment. Do you want to speak?
Well, I just wanted to say that what Patrick's talking about is going to really be covered in my report.
Okay, then I'm going to go to Chuck first.
I just wanted to say thank you, James. That was a really nice presentation about the basin, the way it works, and what we're trying to do. And understand their hesitation about the chloride level. You look at 3 of the 4 wells you talked about, and the chloride's increased. The one well that is a problem, you know, it looks good there, but that well is susceptible to pumping regimes affecting the salt concentrations. Anyway, it was a great presentation, and I'm so glad you're on the CSD's utility advisory committee. Thank you.
Thanks, Chuck.
All right, I have Lindy. Okay. Let me find you. There you are. Okay. Lindy.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you, James. That was a completely different way of kind of looking at our basin with the wells, monitoring wells and extraction wells, et cetera, et cetera. What I think maybe wasn't very clear is what options of water we do have. Simply, we're taking water out of our lower basin because it has less nitrates and hopefully no nitrates, though there is some breakage in some of the wells that has allowed nitrates to get into the lower. The upper aquifer is extremely, because for years the lower aquifer brought the water up and it went through septic systems back in. And so the upper aquifer is gigantic now. And so it's just, there's more, it's a very complicated issue. So, but I do think that the upper aquifer is where we hold some hope in, if we can denitrify and stop pushing the seawater is coming into the lower aquifer, not the upper aquifer yet. So anyway, I just wanted to say it's a good presentation. It's kind of different, but if you look at the graphs that they show at the BMC, you can certainly see the saltwater intrusion coming into the lower basin, and it is expanding. It has not gone back and reduced itself by having a sewer and by trying to clean the upper aquifer. So anyway, I appreciate it, but I still think that we have a complete concern about how much more growth we want to see go onto our basin, especially when you have the CSD beginning to bring up this subject. It's been come up in the last few meetings about bringing in outside water. So if we continue building and we want to go ahead and see who can afford to bring in the outside water, maybe that's what we should be talking about. But I urge caution, and I think a number of the sustainability group, et cetera, if you don't use that water, the less water we use, the better off we are. So anyway, but thank you for that interesting presentation.
Thank you very much, Lindy. Any other questions for James? Right, we're going to go to Deborah for her portion.
Well, first I want to say I am extremely grateful to James to be that person working with me on this committee. And I want to remind everyone that the purpose of the ad hoc committee is to provide information. We do not take a position on the water issues. We simply want to provide as much as possible information so you can make an informed decision when you do have to decide issues, whether they're land use issues or any other type of issue. It's extremely complicated. It's not easy. It's certainly not easy for me as a layperson to walk through some of these things. So I'm going to share with you the latest from the Basin Management Committee. Patrick has touched on some of this already. But first, I want to just give you some definitions. We talk about basin sustainable yield. That is the amount of water that can be taken out of the basin without causing seawater intrusion, which is what James was just talking about. And then there's another term called the target basin yield metric. And that is where we want to be, where we can maintain this sort of equilibrium. And the BMC has chosen a metric of 80%, which it would be 0.80, so that, as Patrick mentioned, there would be 80% of the water we would be using, 20% would be a buffer, so that we would never get close to that point, that tipping point where we would be pulling the salt water in. So in the meeting yesterday, the BMC voted to accept staff recommendations, which really changed the calculation of the sustainable yield, which is the maximum we can take out of the basin safely. The prior sustainable yield was 2,760 acre feet per year, and using the 80% metric was a result of 2,208 acre feet that could safely be taken out. So just so you know where we have been, the current groundwater production is estimated to be 2,010 acre feet per year. And it's broken down. I'm just going to run through these numbers. It's not important that you remember it, but sort of give you an idea. 1,063 acre feet is produced by the water purveyors. So they're the ones taking 1,063 acre feet per year out of the basin. There are estimated to be 200 acre feet of water coming out of domestic wells, 80 acre feet per year coming out of community wells, and 650 acre feet that is being used by ag users. So that is a total of 2,010 acre feet. Based on the old metric, we were well within a safety zone, but we could see that with the maps Lindy mentioned, that we saw the seawater intrusion coming in. And so they went back to the drawing board and they revised their calculation. The most significant change in the calculation is they have reduced the benefit that they were assuming we were getting from the Broaderston leach field. This is where they're taking the recycled water from the wastewater plant and pumping it into the Broaderston leach field, hoping to create a pressure mound that would push water back down into the aquifer. They revised their calculation to assume that only 50% of that we're only getting 50% of the benefit of that water going in there. And it's going to take another 3 to 5 years for that to reach 100% benefit. So we're not really getting all the benefit we need out of that recharge from the recycled water. So that was the largest change. They also made some adjustments in terms of including new infrastructure projects that will come online in early of 2022. The BMC used historical data for the calculation of rainfall. They were using a figure of 17.5 inches per year. They've reduced that. They've adjusted it down to 17.3 inches per year. And lastly, the BMC is taking an adaptive method to the sustainable yield calculation. And this adapted method says, we will not allow any more seawater intrusion to come further inland before stabilizing. So it really means that they have to take a more active, proactive approach to dealing with water. The new estimate that with all of these changes in the calculation, the new estimate was calculated to be a sustainable yield. Now, this is the maximum that we can take out safely from the basin of 2,380 acre feet per year. At an 80%, which is, remember the target, we want to only take 80% of what we can take. That would be 1,904 acre feet. Well, if we're taking out 2,000 acre feet, we're a little past that mark. So instead of being at 80%, we're at 84%, which is what Patrick mentioned. I think you're going to see some more actions from the BMC addressing this, trying to pull that number back and get us back into the 80% zone, the safety zone. Here are a couple of the other things that were approved during the meeting. The BMC approved use of funds to pursue funding for a transient groundwater model. Now, what does this mean? They've been using what they call a steady state model. It's like a one point in time. It's like, I'm going to take your blood pressure now, and that's your blood pressure, versus a transient model where I'm going to maybe take your blood pressure over several periods of time. And so it would be a more accurate and would improve their ability to predict future basin conditions. You know, a lot of this is about predicting what's going to happen in the future. To pay for this transient model, it's expensive. It's over $200,000, close to $300,000. $150,000 would be coming from the county. And the BMC staff is going to apply to the State Water Resource Control Board for matching funds of another $150,000 to pay for this. Very important, very beneficial. The directors also approved surveying additional wells to improve monitoring and achieve more accurate water elevation data. We see how important that is by James' presentation. So if we have more than just a few wells being monitored, the little red dots. If we have more wells that are being monitored, we're going to get more information. They also approved a recommendation to make improvements to the lower aquifer monitoring program. I don't know exactly what that is, but obviously it has something to do with monitoring what's going on in the lower aquifer. And obviously that's really helpful. So that is the end of my report. I do have a personal note that I want to make. This is not, this is just my own personal opinion. I've seen articles, I've been sent articles about communities in California that have been having to truck water into their communities because they don't have an aquifer. And we're blessed to have an aquifer. And so I just want everybody to realize how fortunate we are that we have an aquifer, and that all of these steps that are being taken by the Basin Management Committee, by the county and the 3 water purveyors, nobody benefits by the basin not by being disrupted. I think they're working and probably will be making even more changes in the future. This is my personal opinion now, to address our current and future situation in light of the basin. But I think we have a lot to be thankful for. And that's the end of my report and my comment. And I'm happy to take questions.
I think you have one. Chuck, I've asked you to unmute.
Yes, thank you, Deborah. It's tough to summarize all that happens at a Basin Management Committee meeting anymore. They're finally, and it's fully engaged. There's a lot going on. You talked about the lowering of the estimated sustainable yield and some of the decisions that went into lowering that number. The one way to think about that when you talked about adaptive management, I think was that in the past, the Basin Management Plan was set up to, in a sense, allow a certain amount of saltwater intrusion so long as none of the wells registered above 250 milliliters. We were going to let saltwater come in until it got to a certain point. And we decided that, no, that's not the way we should operate. We can't let it get any worse. We can hope to make it better. And so that was kind of a huge change. And that's one of the big things that resulted in that number. And that was a great presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Chuck. And thank you for that more detailed explanation of adaptive method. It's easy to get caught up in the numbers, and that was a really good point that you made. Thank you.
All right, we're going to be moving on to the consent agenda. Before we start that, I just want one clarification since I wasn't at the meeting, Locac meeting last month. The letter that we sent to the county last month regarding the water issues implies that we can only do conditional approvals on new projects that will use water. Is that correct? Or did I read that wrong? This is for the committee only. Yael, I see your hand is up.
Not regarding this issue. I just want to apologize, first of all, for coming in so late and not letting anybody know. I remember the meeting and I was so busy in something and it was like completely flew out of my head, and then Paul all of a sudden realized. So I'm really apologizing. My head was somewhere else. If you still want anything regarding the trees and landscape, I may give you a short report. Otherwise, I'm really apologizing.
No worries.
Old brain.
No worries, we're good.
Trish, could you repeat again what you said? I kind of got a little confused.
Do you want me to come? Okay. I was not here last month, and I know that Locac approved a letter to go to the county regarding water and new development. So before we go to our consent agenda and our regular agenda items, I just wanted to clarify that the letter that we sent implies that we can only do conditional approval if new projects are using water. Do I have that right or wrong? Just so that I'm prepared for the rest. Sue.
It confuses me the way you said it. My understanding is that if we could condition a project now with, say, offset numbers, we could consider recommending that the county, that approval. But if that's not available to us right now, because they are in question, then we are going to say no, because we are concerned about the sustainability of the water and the basin. What was the exact thing we said? Gosh. I'm looking for it.
And anyone else from the committee can help out on this clarification?
I can say it. I have it right here. If we could condition, we could consider okaying it, but otherwise denials will be made with the understanding that existing building requirements may not address the current condition, thereby imperiling the ability of Los Osos to have a water supply adequate for current residents. So yeah, we're saying new water usage without any way to condition them. We are saying that we will deny them.
Okay. All right, thank you. Let's go to the consent agenda. Larry, could you present from land use the addition of 410 square feet of living areas? And Timothy Belcher, I will unmute you also in case you would like to ask a question. And Larry, I'm going to unmute you. You're unmuted.
Okay. Anyway, this was just a project of adding some more living area. It didn't really involve more water use or anything. And so the land use committee decided it was a valid project, good for the community and good for the owners. And so that's why we put on the consent agenda.
Anyone want to make a motion? Or have any questions? First questions, Lynette?
Well, I was going to do the motion.
Okay,
So
motion, wait, we have Jim who has a, let me find you, Jim.
He's second.
There you are. Okay.
I was just going to make a motion to approve.
All right.
Let's move this thing.
I do think Lynette beat you. Okay, but Jim,
Fine,
you
I'll
will
second it.
You will second it. All in favor?
Aye.
Any nays? Okay, approved. So Timothy Belcher, thank you so much for coming tonight, and it has been approved.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Sorry you had to wait so long.
Oh, well, it was interesting listening.
All right,
Good information. Thanks.
Thank you. Let's go to the regular agenda items. Larry, these are coming from land use. You want to kind of go over them?
Well, the first one here was a new house, which normally we would consider it okay, with the water offsets and all that. But since there is a question now about the future water of the community, the land use committee could not come to a consensus on this. There was a vote, and it was 4 against projects, 2 for the project, 1 person abstaining. So we decided to pass this on to Locac, have them ask their questions or make any statements they want, and let's decide on this project.
Okay, and I did open the floor to William Hurley, who is the He's with Dos Osos Timber Works, so I did keep that open for him. Any committee questions? Jim?
Yeah, I just like to know from Larry, the people who have voted against the project, can you identify what the reasons?
They were just stating that the rules and stuff for a permit have been met, you know, and even though there are people in the community are concerned about our water thing, there is, you know, that this is a legitimate permit and they've jumped through all the right hoops and done everything they can. They didn't have the water offset projection for us, which was a little disappointing. As they also, there's some tree mitigation that needed to be mitigated, and they didn't have the answers for that either. But we figured the county would include those. But that was the main reason. There's some people that were, you know, for the project, you know, that met all the rules, and there was no reason to deny it.
The primary reason for not recommending it to the board is because of the water.
Yeah.
Okay.
We have Sue, who has raised her hand.
Yeah, I just wanted to say that those on Locac that had signed the letter did vote against the project, and it would, you know, we tried to explain how we felt that it's not our job to monitor the county. They're going to do their thing the way they're going to do it. Our job is to tell the county how we feel out here about our community. And I just wanted to read some exact words from the CAC compliance and verification form that I got off the county website. It says, the CACs understand that they are to include comments with the recommendations which explain their reasons for supporting or not supporting a proposal and on how that proposal may affect their community. It's acknowledged that CACs do not directly approve or deny projects. I think we have to remember it's not our job to monitor the county. They're going to do what they want to do following their regulations. It's our job to tell them how a project is going to affect us. And I think that's what we decided to do in our letter, is to tell the county that we are concerned about our water, and we have to speak up. We just,
and I agree with that, Sue. I guess my concern is if the only thing wrong with this project is they have not made allowance for water use, and that's a different story than saying there's some problems here and here, you know, land offset and trees and this. It's very easy to move forward.
It was denied strictly for water usage, and that's now a valid reason for us to tell the county that we're concerned about our water.
And it seems to me we had a motion to move it forward with that proviso attached. Project meets all criteria except for water use. If
Yeah,
in fact
we will
that's true.
say, we will, whatever our decision is, we will say that in our comments. That always would go with the comment.
I would make such a motion.
To deny the project based.
Or Mr. Hurley hasn't spoken.
Yeah.
No, is there any other committee members that would like to speak?
It's perfectly legal and responsible. Make a motion and have a second, and then continue the discussion.
I agree. Mr. Hurley, would you like to make a statement?
Yeah, that'd be fine. Am I on?
You're on right now.
Okay, cool. The folks came to me with most of their environmental analysis of constraints taken care of, and or at least analyzed by SWCA. And I had done several projects with intense environmental constraints. So it was a recommendation that these people may be able to help you folks. put the project together within the constraints that they had analyzed before. So that's why we followed the directions. I'm kind of a rule follower. Not to toot my own horn or anything, but I've never built anything outside of the Coastal Commission, and that's pushing 48 years now. So, I don't mind following the rules. I find that they can actually develop and complete an actual better project. So when they took this on, I understood that the Board of Supervisors had looked at a 0% growth rate, and I understand their constraints on that. I was one of the initial members of Locac for the first 5 years. Got a degree in planning. I've been a contractor for 48 years, graduate school in landscape architecture. So I lived out in Los Osos in the late 60s, so I came back because I liked the town. We followed the rules on this, and I told the Cassons that it was kind of a roll of the dice, because if the Coastal Commission comes down and applies a heavy weight to the constraints of the 0% growth rate,
I'm in the middle of
they're going to be
Locac committee meeting, but I'm muted so I can talk. I think.
No.
Now he's muted. Go ahead, Bill.
Okay. Anyway, they've been good clients. They've paid all their bills, which were kind of substantial. The minor use strip was quite a chunk right now. They have a water meter from Golden State sitting on the property. I mean, we have the will serve letter. So some of the issues of the Title 19 and other things are directly addressed during the building permit phase. So I've been trying to keep them abreast of all this stuff and help them out through the process. I understand the constraints. To tell you the truth, I was very, very, very impressed with Mr. Bishop's presentation on our groundwater basin, because I have some experience with it. That was probably one of the best. You guys are lucky you have a guy like James on board, because this is good information going forward. This information for the Coastal Commission could be, it's absolutely wonderful. It's always been a conundrum as to where our water comes from, whether it cross feeds from Churro Valley, or because the limits of our waterfall don't quite match up with how much water is underneath us. I had talked to fellows that used to be on CSA 9, a guy named Al Schweitzer. God, what a character. Army Corps of Engineers, Caltech graduate, partner in Morro Palisades Group, one of the larger land holdings in Los Osos. And, he was the guy that put the initial kibosh on Los Osos getting a sewer treatment plant in the Lake 60, because he wanted to put a pipeline either from Whale Rock or from Santa Margarita into Los Osos, because he was paranoid that a batch treatment plant using 7 times the water, I think if I remember correct, wasn't going to work. So we've been in this conundrum for quite a long time. The numbers James put up were really, to me, actually kind of encouraging.
Well, thank you very much. Anything else about the project that the committee needs to know before we vote?
No, it's just that we followed all the rules, and if the application is deemed complete, we will pursue the rest of the actual building permit process.
All right, thank you. We have one hand up from Patrick's iPad. I will ask you to unmute. Can you keep it very short, because we're running out of time?
Yeah, I'll definitely try to keep it short. Everybody knows that we're in a building moratorium over the prohibition zone, and that was established by the Coastal Commission. They only did the prohibition zone over where the sewer was going in because that's the only thing they could really make decisions on at that time. People have been waiting for decades, though, to build over the prohibition zone and aren't able to do so at this point. So having someone build outside of the prohibition zone isn't really fair because they're using our same water that anybody else would be using. And we are in an overdraft situation. The purveyors have all stated that and don't believe there's enough water at this time for the present population. Not all the ordinances that the county has have been updated, and they are not in the best interest at this time of the community, especially Title 19, which they are using to still approve development. And just because that someone has followed all of the ordinances in the rules doesn't mean those must be honored. The goal of this committee is to advise the county and not to just approve things blindly. The letter that you did state or that you wrote and approved states that water demanding projects must be denied until we have a sustainable, stable basin. And we don't have that. Mr. Hurley does a really good job crossing his T's and dotting his I's and of following the rules. But the rules are faulty and not in the best interest of this community now, and they are being changed. But this project is still using water from our overdrafted basin and should be denied. Golden State has no choice but to give will-serve letters. They aren't implying there is sufficient water, though. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Any other comments, concerns, questions? All right. I don't see any hands up. Can I have a motion?
You have it already.
Okay. Do I have a second? Thank you,
I don't
Jan.
know what the motion is. Somebody's got to tell me.
Jim?
Do we have an emotion to deny this?
We do from Jim. I'm trying to unmute him. Sorry.
No problem.
I don't even find him on here. All right. Anyone? He's not on.
Must have gotten off or something.
Yeah.
I believe the motion was that we were going to deny it based simply on the fact that they were using water, but that the project itself was, I don't know if correct would be the right word, or was permittable under the county rules, but that it's kind of like a protest vote, if you will, in my mind, that it's a great project, it's fine, except we don't want to use any water, so we're going to vote no anyway. That's how I'm taking it.
Okay. Can I have someone do a motion?
I'll say basically what Deborah said, motion to deny based on the fact of new water usage, although they are following county rules.
Okay. Do I have a second?
I'll second that.
Okay, Larry is the second. All in favor with Sue's motion, raise your hand. I see 2.
Looks like Jan has her hand up, maybe.
Okay, I'm trying to find, thank you, Jan, for putting that hand up. So I see Jan, Sue, and Larry with their hand up. All those who oppose. Lynette.
Oppose the denial, correct?
Yes, Lynette, Tim. Lynette and Tim. Yael, how do you vote?
He's muted.
Asked to unmute.
I'll abstain, please.
Okay. Who else are we missing?
I didn't see Deborah.
I abstain.
Deborah abstain. I abstain. Lynette was a no.
So we're missing James.
I abstain.
Okay. Okay, I think we got them all. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Hurley.
So what was the
Okay.
outcome?
I think we ended up with 4 abstain, 2 noes, and 3 yeses.
3 yeses to deny, 2 noes to not deny, and 4 abstains.
Yeah.
So it passes basically.
No, it does not.
It's not?
Does not.
3 to 2.
Oh.
Oh, it passes. Yeah, you're right. It passes. I'm
Motion
sorry.
passes to deny the project.
We're backwards. I'm sorry. Oy.
Okay.
No.
Thank you. Let's go to Larry. Let's go to request 0008, request for MUP/CDP to build a 10-stall horse barn and a 1,200 square foot guest house.
Okay. And this was submitted and they actually
voted to deny the motion, so it would have been 3-3 and it wouldn't have passed.
It doesn't matter that it passed. Hey, guys.
I don't know who's talking.
Maybe.
Okay, so anyway, this project, it's kind of outside the township here of Los Osos. It's up Clark Valley Road. It is a new water use, but again, I think in investigation, it's not part of the Los Osos water basin, but it is taking water out of the ground. Anyway, so again, we wanted to just pass this on to the all of Locac committee to decide if it's a good project. He's got all the space for it. The land is big, and just leave it up to Locac to make the final decision on this project. And I don't know if they're here to talk about it also.
Yes, they are. We have Robert here and he is unmuted.
Good evening, board members. I don't know if we want to go through the project really quick, but it is a 10-stall horse barn and a guest house, workshop, and garage right next to it. And we will have pastures for the horses down below and an arena for them. We have, there's not much more to say about it. At first, we wanted an ADU, but we cannot build an ADU in the coastal zone. So we have changed to a guest house, workshop, and garage to be within the county's rules on for the property. And we are here for the minor use permit for the horse barn.
So tonight it's not to discuss the guest house, only the horse barn.
Yes, our minor use permit is only for the horse barn. It's not for the guest house. That is an allowed use in this zone.
All right. So for the horse barn, 10-stall horse barn outside of our aquifer, does not draw water from our basin. Could I get a motion?
I make a motion to approve.
I'll second.
Lynette second. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Thank you. Let's opposed. Anyone opposed?
We have Carrie Brown.
I want to get Carrie on before we go any further.
I just wanted to clarify that the guest house would require the minor use permit. You're in the coastal appealable zone. So if you want to include that.
Oh yeah, we would like to include that. Yes. Sorry about that. I misunderstood.
Okay, then that's a whole different project than a horse barn. Robert, can you talk about the guest house?
Right, the guest house is in this zone. We are allowed to have a 600 square foot guest house. So it has 2 bedrooms, a bathroom, and a living area. And then we have a workshop that's a 600 square foot workshop and a 420 square foot garage. So our footprint, the total footprint's about 1,400 square feet. And then that's right next to the horse barn. So our client is wanting to have his relatives come in and stay every once in a while and enjoy the property. And I can share my screen if you guys would like to see the layout of the property.
No, that's okay. I think that was all done in land use. So can I get a motion?
I have a question.
Me
Yeah,
too.
James?
Is the horse barn uphill from Los Osos Creek? And are there management practices implemented to prevent discharge of horse manure and other waste into the creek?
We do have to do our best practices, yes. So we will have our arenas flat, the horse barns flat on flat land, graded flat land, and then they will dispose of the horse waste. Yes. So we are uphill of the creek, I believe. I'm not sure how far, but we are well above the creek. We'd have to go through another property for it to get even down there and across Clark Valley Road.
Okay, thanks.
Okay. Sue?
Yeah, I just had a question about that too, that I wanted to ask Carrie in regarding potential runoff into the creek. I know we're not in the same aquifer, we're not even in the fringe zone, but the creek does pass through on its way and would recharge our basin. And I was wondering if the county monitors this, you know, what we're talking about, what the question that James brought up regarding seepage into the creek from horse waste or whatever that would be.
Generally, that is a condition that would be placed on the project to, it's like a waste management plan, you know, for the manure and horse waste. That is something that we could condition the project for. We generally do for a horse boarding facility.
Now, are you going to condition that just as general, or do we need to ask for that?
I think that would be a general condition, but I don't think it could hurt for you to include that in your motion too.
Thanks, Carrie.
One thing I would have to say, we're not a horse boarding facility. This is for their private use. So we're not taking in outside horses and boarders here. So when I heard boarding, that's not necessarily the same thing.
And that certainly is the plan for now, but you know, with everything, things change decades later, and it's just something that is of interest.
All right. Any other questions?
So we've got Deborah.
I have a question.
And
Yes.
then Chris
Oh,
Eiler.
and then Chris, thank you. Deborah.
I noticed by looking at the plans for the barn that in actuality, it appears to me that there will only be 5 horses in this barn, although it is a 10-stall barn. Half of the barn is going to be used most likely for tack or, you know,
for feed,
saddling up your horse, because there are really only 5 proper stalls there. So I make this comment to bring it to people's awareness that 10 horses sounds like a lot and 5 is quite a bit less. And so we're really talking about 5 horses on a rather large piece of property. Am I correct? 5 horses?
You are correct. We have 5 on the one side and 5 stalls on the other. And yes, there's tack rooms, feed rooms. So you are exactly correct.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Chris. Oops.
You can unmute.
Hello. Thank you, Sue, or Deborah, excuse me.
You are correct. It is only a 5-horse. I'm the builder for Mr. Muscarella, and it is only a 5-horse barn. The 10-horse barn is just something that was the standard offering, and though they could set it up that way, it is only going to be for 5. That Mr. Muscarella only has 1 horse, so for his immediate design, it would only be a 1-horse barn and corral. And what I originally wanted to mention, just to kind of paint it a different picture, we're a 1/4 mile from Los Osos Creek. So it would, if you were on the property and to understand what it would take for runoff to get to the creek, that's kind of a non-issue if you've actually been on the property. Thank you.
Any other questions?
I make a motion to approve both the barn and the guest house.
I'll second.
Lynette is a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? 1. We have 1 abstain and the rest were yes. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you all.
Last thing we have on the agenda is the redistricting of the coastal region. I think I will unmute Bruce and Blake if they're still here. And what I think would probably be a great thing for Locac, and we don't have to do it tonight, of course, but it is to draft a letter stating that we would like to see the Central Coast region stay together. And I think some of us can get together, write the letter, and then send it out to the group as an email draft, see if we get your approval. And then if we get your approval, then we will forward it on to the county and the state. Does that sound all right?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
And then the very last thing I have on the agenda is I know that the November meeting is on Thanksgiving. So I have November 18th or December 2nd as 2 options. And I was hoping to get a vote tonight to do that. And I see that Bruce is here. So is there sending a letter trying to keep the Central Coast together? Is that all right with you?
Absolutely, Madam Chair.
Okay.
I mean, Chris, the idea is to get the voice of the community here. And when you
Right.
said Central Coast, I think you mean North Coast.
Well, yeah, North Coast,
Yeah.
our coast.
Right. And
Yeah.
and so that's what I've been hearing, you know, throughout the North Coast, is that people feel that it is important to have, you know, all the towns of the North Coast. That was actually a fair amount of public comment is written up in the staff report for last Tuesday's meeting. So if that is Locac's feeling as well, it would be a very strong thing to add your voice to, in opposition to dividing the communities of the North Coast into separate districts. So again, if that's your pleasure, and I hope it is.
It is, absolutely. So I will get a group together and we will write the letter. We will pass it to everyone on Locac, get everybody's approval, and then send it on to the county and the state.
Okay. No, just, it only needs to go to the county. This is all contained
Okay.
at the Board of Supervisors, So.
Okay, it will go to the county. Thank you.
And if you need any help finding exactly where to get it into the redistricting process, Blake or I can certainly help you.
Oh, don't worry. I think I have Blake on speed dial. I
There
will
you
be,
go. All right.
I
All
will be
right.
reaching out.
All right. I'll bid you a pleasant good evening and look forward to seeing you soon.
Thank you very much.
Take time.
All right, so for our next Locac meeting, November 18th or December 2nd, what do y'all think?
Okay, December 2nd is the LOCSD meeting.
Okay, thank you. What about November 18th?
Fine with me.
Fine with me.
Yep, sounds good.
All right. I'm hearing mostly yeses for the 18th. Let's go ahead and try that.
Excellent.
Okay, so the next meeting will be November 18th at 7 o'clock. Be here or be square. And the meeting is adjourned at 9:19.
Good job,
Thank
Trish.
you.
Thanks,
Happy
everyone.
Halloween.
Oh, happy Halloween.